If you're curious what a dietitian does, you're not alone. A lot of people have many misconceptions about what a registered dietitian nutritionist does and doesn't do. So in today's video, we're going to talk all about that from a registered dietitian nutritionist myself. I want to share with you things that we do and things that we don't do. If you're new to the channel, hello and welcome. My name is Katie. I'm a dietitian nutritionist and personal trainer, and I'm here to help you get strong, confident, and connected with your body by mindfully fueling your muscles. So if you're interested in mindful eating, nutrition topics, and fitness videos, then make sure to hit the subscribe button below and join the dark blue community. All right, so starting the topic of dietitian nutritionist, let's read a handy dandy definition of what a dietitian actually does. So we're pulling this from good old Google. It says dietitians and nutritionists counsel patients on nutrition related issues. Dietitians and nutritionists are experts in the use of food and nutrition to promote health and manage disease. They advise people on what to eat in order to lead a healthy lifestyle or achieve a specific health related goal. Overall, I would agree with that definition of what a dietitian does from good old Google. Now, one thing that I want to kind of pick apart about what it says is that it says that they advise people on what to eat in order to lead a healthy lifestyle or achieve a specific health related goal. Now, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but in certain circumstances where there is something like preventing disease or treating a chronic illness, we will give specific dietary advice on those topics. Now, when it's more so for disease prevention and just overall healthy habits, I think that we come more from a guidance perspective. So we're not just advising people on exactly what to eat and kind of micromanaging what people eat, but we're being the guide. There are USDA guidelines on like how many fruits and vegetables to have, whole grains, and how much of those to have and stuff like that. But I think we kind of like to treat it from a holistic perspective and a realistic and sustainable perspective and work with people where they're truly at. So we're not just like, you know, the food police and advising people and whatnot. I hope that makes sense. Now, also to mention this, it says dietitians and nutritionists. And if you're wondering the difference between dietitians and nutritionists, then I have another full video on that. Essentially, you can be a nutritionist and not have a dietitian title, but those that are just a nutritionist or health coach without the registered dietitian in front of it are not board certified dietitians, and they have a much smaller scope of practice when it comes to nutrition advice. A nutritionist would be able to recommend the USDA guidelines, help people develop healthy habits, and sort of coach, whereas a dietitian has the ability to do all of that, plus they can prescribe supplements and dietary advice and things like that for chronic disease states, and can work in hospitals to do things like tube feedings and recommendations for cancer patients and different stuff like that, just to name a few things. All in all, dietitians have a much wider scope of practice and are allowed to prescribe, whereas health coaches and nutritionists do not have that ability. That's not to say that you will never see someone that is going outside of their scope of practice, but know that that is completely and utterly illegal. So a dietitian is in the field of nutrition science and what we call dietetics. And dietetics is an evidence-based practice, which essentially just means that we use the most up-to-date research to recommend things like health advice, nutrition advice, and other dietary advice. We also use this knowledge and education to provide medical nutrition therapy, which I will explain a little bit more about in detail later in this video. And before we dive into that part of the video, let's talk about 3 different areas that dietitians can work in. There's a lot of different places that you will find a dietitian. So what are those? The 3 main places that you will find a dietitian is in a community setting, a clinical setting, or a food service management setting. So let's talk a little about each. For example, I am personally a community nutrition dietitian, and I work remotely to counsel and coach individuals on having a healthier relationship with food, and we work on intuitive and mindful eating. Oftentimes I've worked with clients that have had a past history of disordered eating, or maybe some disordered thoughts around food and obsession over calorie counting or macro counting, and they're looking to find a more sustainable approach to nutrition. Oftentimes, community nutrition is focused on preventative health, and sometimes you will see dietitians that do coaching like myself, or you can also find a lot of community dietitians in public health sectors or somewhere like WIC, Women, Infants, and Children, where they do a lot of nutrition counseling as well to help mothers fuel their bodies after pregnancy and also help their little ones build a healthy lifestyle as well. So a lot of it is primary care or care that is preventative nutrition versus tertiary care, which is more so in the hospital where you kind of treat disease when it's already happened. The next one is the clinical sector, and I have a lot of amazing friends that work in clinical nutrition and I value them so much. They are an asset to the hospitals, and I think clinical dietitians actually don't always get appreciated as much as they should. There are tons of badass things that clinical dietitians do, but just to give you a little sneak peek of what that looks like, they work with inpatients to prevent malnutrition. They may educate on diets in the hospital so that when that patient leaves the hospital, they have the knowledge and power to make that change once they leave the hospital, if they so choose. They monitor patients' diets and supplements to make sure everything is being tolerated well, and if it's not, that they can give prescriptive advice to change the supplements so they can optimize their health while in the hospital. And they do other really important things like calculate tube feeding calculations so the doctors can have the correct calculation so the patient can tolerate their tube feeding if it's needed. So clinical dietitians, again, I will say, are absolutely badass, and we appreciate you so much, clinical dietitians who are watching this. The last section of dietetics is food service management, and in food service management, as it sounds, you're more of in a managerial position. For example, you most likely will be in a hospital or assisted living facility for a position like this, and you have, for example, the purchasing power over the budget and what types of supplements that you get for your patients and different things like that. That is just a brief overview of what all different types of dietitians do. There are also miscellaneous categories that kind of don't totally have a specific category, or they kind of mesh into clinical and community at the same time. So that can include stuff like eating disorders, sports nutrition, and things like that. I want to emphasize that this is a very brief skimming of each different category, and I am by no means covering everybody's job description, but I just wanted to explain in kind of layman's terms the different types of places that you can see dietitians, so you don't just think that we're in hospitals or that we're all working in food service or that we're all just coaching. We do a lot of different things. I think one of the most undervalued things that dietitians do is medical nutrition therapy. It just doesn't get talked about a lot, and I think that it's an essential piece of the puzzle that people who aren't dietitians should know about when thinking about consulting with a dietitian or when they see a dietitian in a hospital. Most people just think that we spew out meal plans, but we actually don't. We use medical nutrition therapy. We use nutrition in a therapeutic way to help support a variety of populations, optimizing their health and preventing or managing disease. We can work with so many different populations, and a lot of times dietitians specialize in a specific area, but I have a little list here of several different populations that we work with just to give you some solid examples. So we work with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure and chronic kidney disease, PCOS and hormonal imbalances, thyroid disorders, eating disorders including anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorder, cancer treatment, malnutrition, and competitive sports, aka sports nutrition. And that is, again, just to name a few. We have to know so many different populations, and again, oftentimes we specialize to really get the most out of our education, because while we have a very great general education, oftentimes to really know everything about a specific nutrition topic, we have to specialize to really focus in. So now that we've talked about what dietitians do, let's talk about what dietitians don't do. The first thing that dietitians don't do is shame you about your food choices. Now, of course, there's some dietitians that are probably outliers, as with any profession, but most dietitians and the friends that I know do not shame people for their food choices. And we ourselves have a variety of foods, and don't hesitate to have a pizza, don't hesitate to have a donut, but we have foods in moderation. And I know that's a tough word to distinguish, like what exactly is moderation, but essentially us dietitians love food and know that all foods fit, and we are just lovers of food so much that we have gone to school for it and want to teach our passion to others, not shame people about their food choices. The second thing that we do not do is prescribe the latest diets. I hate to say it again, but unfortunately there are some outliers out there that might specifically target a specific diet. But most of the time we're not jumping on the fad train that the internet so loves to bring to us day in and day out. I'm talking to you, keto. We like to use the things that actually have evidence to them. So for example, let's talk about the keto diet. The keto diet only has evidence for helping people specifically that suffer with seizures. So the keto diet can help with seizure prevention, and that is what the research says, not any of the other claims that are out there. So we would prescribe keto diet to someone who is suffering from epilepsy, not just your average person, because there's not a whole lot of long-term evidence that says that keto diets work for just the average person, again, long term. And this is more so like a side note PS statement about dietitians, and that is not every single dietitian is going to be a perfect fit. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a very broad education in college, and sometimes in our master's degree, we will specialize or start to specialize in the area that we so choose. So I did a lot of research projects on intuitive and mindful eating when I was in grad school, and I did a lot on nutrition counseling and motivational interviewing and sports nutrition. Kind of a big mesh of things, but that was my specialty area. Other dietitians might specialize in the geriatric population, pediatric population, or renal patients, diabetes, things like that. So you would be better off going to me for mindful and intuitive eating, and another dietitian maybe for diabetes. So I think about it like your specialty doctors. Doctors specialize oftentimes in specific fields of medicine. Same thing with nutrition. We specialize in specific fields of nutrition. So I hope that helps explain a little bit more about how you can maybe find a dietitian if you're looking for one in the future, and kind of the differences between different dietitians and what we do and don't do. If you have any questions about dietitians that you would like me to answer in a future video, then drop your questions in the comment section below and I would love to answer them. I will leave some recommendations for videos that you can watch after this one, and definitely don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.